Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Fearless Floyd Show. As always, I am your host, Fearless Floyd, and today is Saturday, October 6th, 7th, 2023. Man, a week's already gone in October. Man, time flies. Anyway, as you see behind me, Biden's Democrats $6 billion war on Israel. And this is USA v. Iran to Hamas. I'm going to connect some dots for you and show you. I'm going to put a question mark in your mind or not. That's up to you to determine. I'm just going to show you some evidence. Come to your own conclusions. It's for entertainment purposes only. I'm not suicidal. Like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about this crazy mess the world's getting into. Are we really in the end times? Is this Armageddon coming to fruition? Remember, it's going to start in the Middle East. What we've been told in the East. Is this it? I don't know. Let me click these two so we already know where we're at. Full screen.
Fox News alert, Israel is at war. That's the declaration from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after Palestinian militants launched surprise rocket attacks from Gaza overnight. The barrage reportedly killing at least 22 as Hamas fighters continue to infiltrate Israeli territory. Florida Congressman and House Armed Services Committee member Carlos Jimenez joins us now. Congressman, I know this issue is one that you pay very close attention to and involved with. As you see the news this morning, what's your reaction?
My reaction is Prime Minister Netanyahu, his prime duty is to protect the Israeli people, and he's going to have to do what he has to do in order to protect the Israeli people. Look, I've been there a number of times to Israel. I've seen just how close some of those villages are, Israeli villages are to the Gaza Strip, and so I expect this. It's going to take a while, but I expect at the end that the Israeli military will handle the situation and restore peace. Unfortunately, there's going to be more bloodshed before it gets better.
And we'll continue to report on that story as it develops throughout the morning. I want to move to this domestic politics with you as well, Congressman. 45 Republicans have now called to change the rules in the House, to overhaul the rules after former.
There you go. Some of you may not be old enough to remember watching the evening news night after night after night, watching these Palestinians throw rocks using the slings to sling rocks, Molotov cocktails, just whatever they could against the Israelis. And we watched that for just years and years and years. And it's back, folks. So did Biden fund this? Is this a deliberate, targeted action that they knew exactly where that $6 billion was going? Now, let me preface this for everybody so y'all understand. This wasn't $6 billion that came out of the taxpayer dollars of the United States of America. We didn't pay for this. That $6 billion was collected in affiliated U.S. Treasury Federal Reserve banks into one account with the U.S. Treasury for all the oil reserves, the sales for Iranian oil. Those funds had been frozen, and part of the negotiations that Biden did with Iran recently was to trade Iranian hostages that we had for American hostages, 5 for 5. And then we threw in $6 billion just for good measure, right? It's a crazy commentary that we would give a country that has long time been on the top 5 countries of domestic terrorism, that we would give them $6 billion of their own money that's frozen, and it's frozen for a reason. And we'll get into that right here. This is from NPR, and I tried to pick the most liberal rags that I could, or whatever. Sometimes they don't even cover it, so I had to go to more conservative leaning platforms. September 13th, 2023, White House defends plan to swap money and prisoners for Americans held in Iran. Now, I want you to see who wrote this. Michelle Kellerman. All right. The Biden administration's deal with Iran would also give Tehran access to $6 billion of its own oil revenue. Some in Congress warn that it will just encourage more Iranian hostage taking. Leila Fadel host. The Biden administration has agreed to a prisoner swap with Iran. The deal will also give Tehran access to $6 billion of its own oil revenue. Some in Congress are warning that this will just encourage more Iranian hostage taking, as NPR Michelle Kellerman reports. Michelle, 5 Americans are expected to be released as soon as next week, and the U.S. had to make some difficult decisions, according to the State Department spokesman, Matthew Miller. This is Matthew Miller. We have to make tough choices and engage in tough negotiations to bring these American citizens home. There were 5 American citizens who have been jailed under brutal conditions, one of them for more than 8 years. And the Secretary and the President decided that we need to do everything we can to bring them home, and that's what we are doing. Kellerman. He's talking about American businessman Siamak Namazi, who was passed over in several previous prisoner swaps with Iran. Iran says that under this deal, it will get back 5 of its prisoners convicted in U.S., mostly for sanctions violations. It will also get access to $6 billion that have been frozen in a bank account in South Korea. This is Iranian oil revenue, and Iran's president Ibrahim Raisi told NBC News that his country can use it however it wants. He spoke through an interpreter, making a point that the U.S. disputes. President Ibrahim Raisi, through an interpreter. This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it. Kellerman. The Biden administration says that that's not the case. Right now, the money is being moved from South Korea to Qatar. Secretary of State issued a waiver so that banks will feel comfortable doing these transactions. Miller says once the $6 billion are in Qatar, they'll put it in a restricted account. Miller. It will be held there under strict oversight by the United States Treasury Department, and the money can only be used for humanitarian purposes. And we will remain vigilant in watching the spending of these funds and have the ability to freeze them again if we need to. Kellerman, House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Michael McCaul is not so sure. He says he's deeply concerned that the State Department issued a sanctions waiver to facilitate the transfer of funds. He says it creates a, quote, directed incentive for America's adversaries to conduct future hostage taking. Well, Michael McCaul, bing, you are the player of the day. He says it will create, I already did that. The Republican congressman also thinks the timing is, in his words, egregious. This week, Iranians mark 1 year since the death of a young woman at the hands of morality police, a killing that sparked massive protests in Iran and a fierce crackdown on it by authorities. That was Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department. All right, I'm going to, whoops. So, stop share. Oh, it's got new share. That's new. You still have to go back and change your screen. And you know me, I like to give credit where credit's due. And here is Michelle Kellerman, correspondent, Diplomacy Foreign Desk. Michelle Kellerman has been with NPR for 2 decades, starting as NPR's Moscow bureau chief and now covering the State Department and Washington's diplomatic corps. Her report can be heard on all NPR news programs, including Morning Edition and All Things Considered. As diplomatic correspondent, Kellerman has traveled with secretaries of state from Colin Powell to Antony Blinken, and everyone in between. She was part of the NBR team that won the 2007 Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University Award for coverage of the war in Iraq. So she definitely knows the Middle East. She also knows Moscow. So she's very adept in her own opinions. So let's move on to the next one. And as you see these dots starting to slowly connect, you'll question what the hell is going on. This is from CNN, breaking news, and this was 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, Saturday today. Netanyahu says Israel is at war after Hamas launches surprise air and ground attack from Gaza. Let me stop sharing. I'm going to go back to share because I didn't think I was going to play any audio. Okay, good. Still on there. So.
I feel better again.
Did you know most dish soaps don't remove all the grease, even with scrubbing?
What? I just cleaned those.
Try Dawn Platinum. It removes 99% of grease and food residue. That's why Dawn is trusted to save wildlife affected by oil. Dawn Platinum cleans to the squeak.
There you go with that one. Brand power. Nope, there is not.
Of
And what happens when Hamas raids Israel? And apparently everybody's asleep at the wheel. Israel, which is supposed to have one of the top security surveillance, actually one of the top security surveillance states in the world. US, everybody.
Thousands of Israeli soldiers and civilians are being held hostage as part of an unprecedented attack by Palestinian militants on Israeli territory. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country is at war. His government says the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched more than 2,000 rockets into the country, killing at least 200 people and wounding nearly 1,000. Officials in the Gaza Strip say at least 198 people have been killed there in retaliatory Israeli strikes. The barrage of rocket fire from Gaza into Israeli territory began just after dawn, with explosions heard on the streets of Ashkelon. Sderot is one of the towns thought to have been infiltrated by militants. With the latest on this fast-escalating conflict, here's our Middle East correspondent Yolande Nell. And a warning, you may find some of her report upsetting.
Israeli partygoers from an overnight rave running for their lives. Israel's nightmare scenario, armed Palestinian militants at large in southern Israel. It's thought that dozens entered, some cutting through the perimeter fence from the Gaza Strip. In the town of Sderot, residents hid as fighters drove in. There was shooting and the Israeli casualties began to mount. In a dramatic turn, videos were also shared of Israelis being taken into Gaza as hostages. The day had begun with intense barrages of Palestinian rockets, some reaching as far as Jerusalem. But the worst damage was in the towns closest to Gaza. This was Ashkelon. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, met top security officials.
Since this morning, the state of Israel has been at war. Our first objective is to clear out enemy forces that infiltrated and restore the security and quiet the communities that have been attacked. The second objective, at the same time, is to exact an immense price from the enemy within the Gaza Strip too.
Leaders of Hamas, the Islamist militant group which controls Gaza, now living overseas, were shown watching the unfolding news and praying. In Gaza, there were celebrations after an Israeli tank was captured and stolen Israeli military vehicles were driven in. But soon the deadly pounding by Israeli warplanes began, the Israeli military saying it was targeting Hamas sites. And in Gaza too, the hospitals have now been overwhelmed. Many Palestinian families have fled from their homes and are seeking safety in UN-run schools. After this unprecedented surprise attack, Israel is calling up military reservists. It said Hamas will pay the price for its actions. And the fighting goes on. The question now, can it be stopped from spreading to other Palestinian areas and the wider region?
Ilan, now there. Well, let's bring you the latest figures coming into us from Gaza. The Health Ministry have told the BBC there that 232 people have been killed and 1,790 have been injured. Well, let's go live now to our Jerusalem Bureau Chief Joe Floto, who's following all the developments. And Joe, also in the past few minutes, confirmation from the Israelis that at least 200 Israelis have been killed in those attacks today. Bring us the latest.
Yeah, so the casualty figures coming up on both sides there. There's still fighting going on. So we're just coming off an Israeli military briefing, and they're confirming that there is ongoing gunfire in some of their military installations and border crossing points on the Gaza Strip, which has taken them hours to retake, and they still haven't completed that process. They estimate that hundreds of militants managed to break out of Gaza and storm several locations near the Gaza Strip in Israeli towns. And we've seen this chaos unfold during the morning hours, with people being taken hostage, a number of people killed, and we've seen extraordinary videos of Israeli civilians being dragged away by militants, supposedly into the Gaza Strip. And we can confirm that there are dozens, we think, of hostages now being held by militants in Gaza.
There's so much to talk about, Joe.
What can you say to that? So let's move on to our next frame. I didn't want to play all that for you and get you extremely bored and have you jump off the video. I want to carry on, keep connecting these dots for you. So when you see these dots go boom, 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 come to your own conclusion. I'm not going to try to change your mind. I'm not trying to convince you, make you believe something. You know, you can believe your eyes. You can't believe your eyes. It's up to you. It's from Politico. Right here. Is there a date on this? Right here. Today's date, October 7th, 2023, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Image just days before the attack, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei delivered a speech at the International Islamic Unity Conference claiming that the, quote, usurper Zionist regime, close quote, would soon come to an end. Wow, nobody listened to the domestic terrorist. There seems to be a rash of that going around. Yeah. Wow. We read his manifesto on the internet, on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, but we ignored it. Right? Iran praises Hamas as attack reverberates around Middle East. Well, it reverberated around the world. High-level Iranian officials were also reported to have met with members of Hamas leadership in Lebanon last month. It's by Giselle. I'm probably going to massacre this one. I'm just going to say Giselle R. Ewing, because I can pronounce Ewing. All right, Giselle, hope you married into the Ewing family. Iranian government officials congratulated Hamas on its surprise attack on Israel early Saturday morning, expressing support for the, quote, anti-Zionist resistance, close quote, across the region. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that Israel is, quote, at war, close quote, Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nassar Kanani praised Hamas, quoting, what took place today is in line with the continuation of victories for the anti-Zionist resistance in different fields, including Syria, Lebanon, and occupied lands, close quote. Kanani told the semi-official news agency ISNA. Government-backed Tasnim news agency reported that a top military advisor to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Major General I'm massacre this, Yahya Rahim Safavi, pledged Iranian support to the Hamas operations against Israel. Meanwhile, Iranian state television showed clips of parliament members standing and chanting, quote, death to Israel, close quote, and, quote, Palestine is victorious, close quote. Just days before the attack, Khamenei delivered a speech at the International Islamic Unity Conference claiming that the, again, usurper Zionist regime would come to an end. Quote, today, the Palestinian movement is more alive than it has ever been during these 70 or 80 years, Khamenei said. The Honorable Imam Khamenei, may God be pleased with him, described the usurper Zionist regime as a cancer. This cancer will definitely be eradicated, God willing, at the hands of the Palestinian people and the resistance forces throughout the region, close quote. High-level Iranian officials were also reported to have met with members of the Hamas leadership in Lebanon last month. A strong Iranian support for the attacks comes as President Joe Biden reaffirms that the U.S. commitment to Israel's security, and many GOP candidates jump to place blame for Saturday's violence on the Islamic Republic. Iran has historically maintained strong ties with both Palestinian Hamas and Hezbollah, a Lebanese militant group that holds similar goals, including destruction of the Israeli state. Hezbollah issued a statement Saturday saying that the organization is in, quote, direct contact with the leadership of the Palestinian resistance, close quote. According to the Wall Street Journal, which is a conservative rag, maybe not so much anymore, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said the attacks, quote, send a message to the Arab and Islamic world and the international community as a whole, especially those seeking normalization with this enemy, that the Palestinian cause is an everlasting one, alive until victory and liberation, close quote. And all this is about land. That's all this is about. Palestinians were there. Israel decided they want to all move in and create their own country because God told them that was theirs. And it's just been a cluster chicken plucker since. The statement reflects the precarious state of affairs in the region as Saudi Arabia and Israel have been inching toward a U.S.-backed rapprochement, a state of harmony that would be deeply troublesome for Iran. While Iran was quick to celebrate the Hamas attacks, both the Saudi and Qatari governments released messages of concern regarding the escalating violence. They don't want a whole bunch of shit going on in the Middle East. They want to work in harmony. They want to work together. They want to get off the teat of the United States Federal Reserve note, which is the world's reserve currency, so they can do their own deals with their own currency or their own assets. But as you saw from the previous articles, the United States Treasury controls, it's their money. That's why I tell everybody, it's their money. The Secret Service polices it. It's their money. Don't think it's not for a minute. That's why it's got serial numbers all over it. You know, I don't know why we can't vote with dollar bills. Just write your vote on a dollar bill, right? Hand it in. They've already got it tracked. All right. Wow. I'm almost done. And I'm going to move on to I got one more article after this, and then that'll be the last dot to connect, and then it's on your own from there on out. While Iran was quick to celebrate the Hamas attacks, both the Saudi and Qatari governments released messages of concern regarding the escalating violence. In respective statements on Saturday, both governments contextualized the latest flare in conflict by referencing the Israeli government's role in stripping rights away from the Palestinian people. They're also stripping the rights away from their own people. I mean, they were close to a civil war, if not, percolating on it. With the Qatari Foreign Ministry going so far as to blame Israel for the escalation in violence over the weekend. Quote, the state of Qatar expresses its deep concern over the developments in Gaza Strip and calls on all parties to de-escalate and exercise maximum restraint. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs holds Israel solely responsible for the ongoing escalation due to its ongoing violation of rights of the Palestinian people, the latest of which was repeated incursions into Al-Aqsa Mosque under the protection of the Israeli police, close quote. Apparently what happened is Israel went into Palestine and were doing no-knock searches, just basically, bum rushing. And they got a little irritated about it. And this was probably already in the works. That's all speculation on my part, so don't take that as fact. The Qatari statement also called on the international community to compel Israel, and I quote, compel Israel to stop its flagrant violations of international law, respect the resolutions of international legitimacy and the historical rights of the Palestinian people, and to prevent these events from being used as a pretext to ignite a new asymmetric war against Palestinian civilians in Gaza, close quote. Basically, Joe Blow has us again in another proxy war. And don't think we're not going to pay for this. We pay for everything. Foreign Ministry of Saudi Arabia released a similar statement on Saturday, stating that the kingdom is, quote, closely following, close quote, the developing violence and calling for international community to intervene and introduce a, quote, two-state solution to achieve security and peace in the region, close quote. Well, I think you guys in the Middle East need to get y'all crap together. Y'all need to work that out. I'm sorry that, United States and all these oil barons and the British East India Company came into the Middle East and carved y'all's countries up, or y'all's tribal lands up into countries, and created borders and separated families and tribes and everything else. That's on them. The kingdom, quote, the kingdom calls for an immediate halt to the escalation between the two sides, the protection of civilians and restraint, unquote. The statement read, quote, the kingdom recalls its repeated warnings of the dangers of the explosion of the situation as a result of the continued occupation, the deprivation of the Palestinian people of their legitimate rights, and the repetition of systematic provocations against its sanctities, close quote. This is from Nahal Tusi, who also contributed to this report. The authors are, there's multiple authors. Oh, no, it's just Miss Ewing. There you go. So there's that dot. Now we're going to jump to the last dot. And when you read this dot, you're going to be like, huh? What? Now, you remember the dates, right? Okay, the war jumped off this morning, October 7th. Okay. Then we had the prisoner swap, roughly mid-September. that back. And then we have formally announced they're at war today. They've taken hostages today. So our mid-September, and today is the first week of October, the $6 billion in the South Korean bank were frozen by the United States Treasury, released to Iran. Well, Joe Biden made a deal, a 5-for-5 swap plus $6 billion cash on top. I'm trying to think of a comparison. Michael Jordan was such a dominant player. So let's just go Stephon Curry for LeBron James. And then, that's a pretty even swap, I would say. They both won a lot of championships. They're both really good players. Both are going to the Hall of Fame. Both have been MVPs on all levels. But now, would you throw $6 billion on top of LeBron James for Stephon Curry, or vice versa? Even if it wasn't your own money? I don't know. Let's jump on to the next one. These are questions you should ask yourself. When you see this one, it's really going to open your eyes. Like, what? All right. This is Wall Street Journal, October 5th, 2 days ago. Iraq asked for $1 billion in cash. This time, Washington said no. Baghdad says it needs the money drawn from oil sales, but the U.S. seeks to stop illicit flow of dollars to Iran. Okay? Now, let me explain to you how this works. The United States Treasury has frozen across banks around the world over $100 billion. Is probably up to 130, 140 billion by now, maybe even 150 billion of oil revenues for Iraq. Okay. And they're still being frozen from the Iraq war. The United States Treasury releases, I think it's $10 billion every quarter for Iraq to operate its country. So it gets roughly 40 billion a year. And they asked for a measly $1 billion in cash 2 days ago, and the U.S. Treasury said no. Yet 3 weeks ago, they said they want to swap a 5-on-5 trade and give $6 billion of its own money to Iran. So, what's going on here? You just gave $6 billion to Iran, but you don't want to give Iraq $1 billion because it's going to Iran. Are y'all confused yet? Let's read the article. This is by David S. Cloud and Ghassan Adnan. And this is 2 days ago, 7:04 a.m. Eastern time. And I can't read it all, because of course I don't have a subscription, but it's the only one I could find. All right, because nobody else wanted to cover it. That's your mainstream media. Iraq is seeking a special shipment of $1 billion in cash from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, but U.S. officials have withheld approval, saying the request runs counter to their efforts to rein in Baghdad's use of dollars and halt illicit cash flow to Iran. There you go. That's what it says right there. Dollars and halt illicit cash flow to Iran. Okay, I'm not making this stuff up. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think. Share this video with everybody. because these are questions that need to be answered. Why would you not give 1 billion of some countries their own money because you don't want it to go to Iran? But yes, 3 weeks ago, you just gave Iran 6 times that amount. Really? All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. The Fearless Floyd Show at yahoo.com. If you want to email me, fearlessfloydshow.com is my website. You can go on there and get Ann's book, eBook, softcover book. You can get all kind of instruments that I've created on there, trust classes, the videos, all that's available on the website, The Fearless Floyd Show. Almost on every social media platform you can shake a stick at. Just Google the name and you'll find me. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I hope you learned something. I hope this put a question in your mind. I hope you can send this to, some friends, families, colleagues, coworkers, frenemies, enemies, and, maybe open their eyes, because there's a lot of shit going on in this world that really affect us. You guys really don't understand the de-dollarization thing that's going on. They just, these countries just de-dollarized another, oh God, 40, 50 billion. That money's coming home. It's coming home. And what's going to happen when everybody's just got wads and 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 wads of cash? A Starbucks coffee is $25. Yeah. And your donuts are $2, $1.99 a donut. Gallon of gas, $5 all day long. All day, everywhere. Upwards of $10 in some places. That's coming. Got a war. One of your oil producing countries in the Middle East, Iran. That causes instability in the entire region. When that does, what happens to gas prices? They go up. Welcome to the real world. Hope you enjoy the ride. And with that, have a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing until I'm done what I'm doing, whatever that is.